I'm Michael Bocelli. Join me and the Cougar News team for a special night of election coverage you won't get anywhere else. Local issues, local candidates, reaction from across the Santa Clarita Valley. Tune in on Tuesday, November 4th. Coverage begins 7:45 right here on Time Warner Channel 20.
Hello again and welcome to another edition of Newsmaker of the Week. I'm Leon Worden and I am pleased to welcome this week's Newsmakers, the owner of KHTS AM 1220 Radio, Carl Goldman, and from the William S. Hart Union High School District office,
Got it right.
Bob Weber.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Now, you know, school administrator, radio station owner, what do they have in common? Well, we're here to talk about the fact that both of you guys are a disaster waiting to happen. You both got something to do with disaster in the Santa Clarita Valley. Carl, you're head of the SCV Disaster Coalition. We'll get into that in a minute. Bob, what have you got to do with disaster?
Project coordinator for the REMS grant that we just received this year.
And what does that mean?
That means that we need to get ready for the big one. And so whatever it takes, the grant was written. We have a budget that will help us to complete the bins, supply the bins, get training like CERT training, CPR training, ham radio training, anything to do with a disaster so that when the day comes, we know what to do. SIMS training, NIMS training, that's the training that will allow us to connect with outside people who are there, like the Red Cross, to interface with our search and rescue teams, our principals, and so on and so forth, so that we all speak the same language.
Are we just talking about earthquakes, or are we also talking about fires, floods, famine, all that?
Fires like last year. In fact, last year our superintendent and Rob Gapper were both involved in making decisions about, you know, what schools do we open up so that we can house people there, and they were with the city making those decisions minute by minute as the fires creeped over the hills and the 80-mile-an-hour winds jumped 2 miles away and then 3 miles away, and all of a sudden we had a lot of decisions to be made, and they were there doing that.
Two of your schools, in fact, were housing for the Red Cross,
right.
for the victims.
That's right.
And Carl, you know, I'm sure people know to go to KHTS AM 1220 when there's a fire or some other kind of a disaster, but you're actually more involved than just broadcasting that information over the airwaves. Tell me what the SCV Disaster Coalition is and does.
Sure, Leon. The Disaster Coalition was formed about 4 years ago during the flooding here in Santa Clarita. And we realized that, and to backtrack, I also head up the Red Cross out here, which is one of the first responders. And then through the radio station, we of course see the inner workings of all the disasters. And we realized that during a disaster, there's a lot of fluidness, things change, conditions change, and the first responders do an incredible job out there, but then when the dust settles, often there are things that fall through the cracks. And so the Disaster Coalition was formed to fill part of that void. We're really a second responder. We're not out there on the front lines. We're out there after the disaster has occurred to help pick up the pieces. Right now we're approaching a year for the October fires of last year, and we are working with most of the families still who were impacted by the loss of their homes.
So you're obviously not putting out a fire, but you're, what, working with the family whose house just burned down?
Correct. Working with the family whose house burnt down. We're working with the other organizations out there and making sure that we're picking up the pieces in the places they can't.
What kinds of support do you offer?
It runs the gamut. So with the recent fires last year, it included financial support. We became a device to collect money to begin with, and now we're distributing that money. We work with counseling for those families. Some of them are still receiving counseling right now. We're paying the rent because their insurance can't pay for the full amount of the time that it's taking to rebuild their homes. We're actually helping in sifting through some of the bureaucracy out there, so managing that. working with them and the insurance companies, working with them with the county, the city, and most of the other organizations. It could be something as simple as trying to get a utility rehooked up and helping to push that through quicker, and it could be something much more elaborate like rebuilding an entire house.
And I think you mentioned, Carl, that the schools are often a place where a Red Cross shelter is set up. Are all of the schools in the valley kind of hooked into this whole Red Cross network?
Yes, they are, Leon. They've become the Motel 6s of the Santa Clarita Valley, so to speak. So if we have that 7.8 earthquake that they're predicting that we're way overdue for, and that's part of the shakeout that you'll hear about more later, but probably every one of our schools will be housing people from the disaster. Many of the homes will be red tagged and you can't stay there, so where do you go?
Now, I was a kid and you were an adult in the 71 earthquake, if I'm not mistaken.
I was here.
And then, of course, we all remember the 94. Probably more of our viewers will remember the 94 earthquake. You say we're overdue for 7.8. We've never had a 7.8 here, at least in our lifetimes.
We've had them in California, but never here. Right.
And, when you say we're overdue, what does that mean?
It's it's probably over 200 years overdue. That the pressure's there. The seismic studies say that this is going to happen. In fact, the shakeout talks about and sets up a scenario based on the United States Geological Survey team. Dr. Lucy Jones is part of that. In fact, I attended the kickoff of this shakeout at Caltech in June, and what they've done is they've studied the seismic, or the geography rather, of the San Andreas Fault, and they, with the information they have predicted just what's going to take place with a 7.8 earthquake. They have predicted how many bridges are going to go down, how many buildings, the type of buildings, the different problems in the cities and the streets with gas and water, electrical problems with poles, wires coming down, and live wires in the streets. How do we pass and get through our town and get to emergency facilities like the hospitals and so on and so forth. So on October 28th, we do have a summit, and we'll have some of those geologists present to tell us just what it's going to be like in this city.
Okay, so the October 28th, tell me about that. What is that?
It's a summit. It's a chance for us to bring all the first responders.
Us being the Heart District.
Right.
You're going to do this where? When?
At Valencia High School, October 28th, in the gymnasium at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And we'll have about 12 first responders there. We're talking about the Red Cross, the radio station, the voice of the Santa Clarita Valley that kept us so secure in 1994 after that earthquake. Was
KBET back then.
Yeah, and boy, we listened to that day and night. Just what's going on? Is Cal Grove open yet? And so on and so forth. California Highway Patrol, the sheriff, the Henry Mayo Hospital. Our Richard Varner will be there from our transportation. That's going to be quite interesting because we transport about 5,000 students in our valley in school vehicles. And what happens if we have a situation where the Canyon High School's volleyball team is down at Glendale High School and the earthquake happens? How is that bus going to get back? Well, Richard Varner will be there to tell the parents just what the plan is. And that's going to really be interesting for our young people, for our elementary schools. This isn't just for high school. We have opened up all of this information to everybody in the valley. So we really want all the search and rescue teams from all the school districts there, and all the principals and administrators and parents. We need everyone to be involved. At this kickoff event, the seminar, we will have a picture of the San Andreas Fault, and on the top of it will say, "We're all in this together." And we would like all the people present there to sign that poster. It's kind of a symbolic acknowledgement that they own a part in doing their share of preparing for this. In fact, when we actually have that summit, we're there to tell the educational public what we as first responders can do for your school. And will we be there to help you? The answer is yes, but it's also no. You know, the first few hours, we're going to be by ourselves. And so eventually the responders will be there, but it's all up to us now to prepare our emergency bins at all the schools, just like at home. Did you get all your water? You know, do you have your flashlights? Do you have batteries that are still okay? So all those things need to be checked, and we're going through all that now with parent volunteers to prepare for the next thing, and that's the shakeout on November 13th.
Yeah, I want to come back to that, but you know, I mean, people are so worried right now, or afraid now of fire. You know what? Should people be panicking that we're going to have this big, massive earthquake?
No, I think you've got to be prepared. You can't have your head in the sand. Santa Clarita is the poster child for disasters. Look, we've been here, I've been here 18 years, and we've had probably 10, 11 major incidents in Santa Clarita where we've had to trigger things. So we here in the Valley have a much better approach to disasters and a much better handle on disasters than most places throughout the country. Look what happened in New Orleans with Katrina and the disaster that took place after the disaster, where the public officials and your support services didn't really come through in the proper fashion. Santa Clarita is very different. We're very, very well entrenched in handling emergencies, in being prepared, in having situations set up around town so that we can step in very, very quickly. But given that, as you said, Leon, we shouldn't be panicking, but we also, as I said, should not be putting our heads in the sand. We need to be prepared.
On that note, I want to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about what happens to Santa Clarita in a 7.8 earthquake.
The Santa Clarita Artists Association is hosting our annual fundraiser, the Art Classic. This gala event exhibits over 100 professionally judged original artwork by local artists. Come enjoy musical entertainment, hors d'oeuvres, and meet the artists in person. This year, the Art Classic will be held at Hart Hall on Sunday, November 9th from 2 to 6 p.m. The artwork will be on display for free public viewing on Saturday, November 8th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. For more information, call 618-0939 or visit us on the web.
Hello, I'm Mayor Bob Keller, and you're watching SCVTV, local television for Santa Clarita.
Some children have a difficult time obeying rules. Some children don't like to lose at anything. Some children are not what they appear to be. Some children might just be a bad seed. The Bad Seed, currently playing at the Canyon Theater Guild through November 1st. This is an intense thriller not recommended for children of any age. The Bad Seed. Call the Canyon Theater Guild now for your reservations.
Welcome back. We are here with Carl Goldman from KHTS and Bob Weber from the Hart District, and we're talking about disaster preparedness. Now, you mentioned this shakeout, and I know that you can go on the internet to shakeout.org, I believe it is, and you'll find out about this great Southern California shakeout, and it's November 13th. Tell me, Bob, what this is all about.
It'll actually occur at 10 o'clock. There's been a scenario that's...
PM.
AM,
So,
that's been...
so November 13th at 10 a.m. we're going to have a simulated 7.8 earthquake.
Right. And designed by United States Geological Survey Team. They, if you go into that website, you'll find out just how many bridges they expect to go down, how much damage, how many fires, and so on and so forth. It's quite lengthy, and it is catastrophic. But as you said, we don't want to keep our heads in the sand. We need
Well, how
to
many
prepare
people
for
in
it.
Santa Clarita Valley die if we have a 7.8 earthquake?
Depends on what time of the day.
At 10 a.m.
At 10, we're all in school, we're all in business.
We're on buildings.
We're all in buildings. Yeah, I don't even want to think about it. How many people do we have in this? We have 20,000.
We have 280,000 now.
And we have 20,000 high school students. That's not counting any of the elementary schools. So that's
20-some thousand students at COC, not all at the same time.
Yeah. Now we would hope, and we think because of the way we built our schools are the safest place to be, and they are. That's why we, after disaster, that's why we house people in our gyms and so on. And
Well,
so
are
forth.
they? What kind of an earthquake can these Heart District schools withstand?
I'm not qualified to tell you, what. It depends on, I guess, how it shakes too. But I don't know. I guess we'll hear that evening when our geologists are there to tell us just what the prediction is for this valley if we get a 7.8.
There are all kinds of variables that you have to throw in, so to predict and say how many injuries you're going to have, how many buildings are going to collapse, how many are just going to get cracked, that's impossible to say. But no question, there will be many, many injuries and probably many deaths as well. If one is that
we've
big.
done a lot of shows here at Channel 20 about the St. Francis Dam disaster. The big, 13 billion gallons of water that were up San Francisco Canyon, and 1928, the thing didn't even have an earthquake. It was like an old ancient landslide, and the thing just collapsed, boom, and wiped out 450 people here, which is about probably about a quarter of the population of the Santa Clarita Valley at the time, and that didn't even take an earthquake, and then. I know that they've continually been improving dams and things like that. But Castaic Lake, what is that, built to withstand a 8.3 earthquake, I want to say?
But Leon, you can't even...
are we all going to be underwater here, or what's going to happen?
You don't know. You can't predict it. Who could have predicted a year ago that we would have had the tunnel explosion that took place on the 5 freeway? It's impossible. So who knows what's happening at that given moment when something shakes? When you add in all those variables, it's no way to predict other than saying there's going to be a lot of injuries, there are going to be a number of deaths. And we need to be prepared for that.
What do you think needs to be done to make it click with people? I remember after '94, okay, we're all going to go prepare. We're going to nail down our, we're going to bolt our, shelves to the walls and put water in our trunks and in the trunks of our cars. And then that probably lasted for, a few months.
And we also had people that said, I'm getting out of town. I just let my house go. I don't even want to see this house anymore.
94 now was a while ago. And I don't think that people are still bolting their, cabinets to the walls and carrying water in the trunk of their car, most people. What do you think it would take? What does it take to get it to click with people that they need to do these things? And what are the things that they need to do?
I think it takes a tremor as a reminder. And we saw that just a few weeks ago. We had a tremor here in Santa Clarita that shook people up. And now in the days, back in '94, we didn't have the internet out there. Now with the internet, we find, at least at KHTS with our website at hometownstation.com, we're getting more people going to the internet. Right now we have fires outside the area, and we're getting a tremendous amount of traffic on the internet. So we can actually see how many people are coming to our website, coming to a specific story on the website. And that tremor that we had a month and a half ago had 50,000 people pulling up that page on the website. That's 30-40% of our valley were coming to find out what was going on with that earthquake, and that's when you use it as a reminder. What are the things you asked? What are the things you should have? You need to now be prepared for we're saying 3, 4, 5 days of isolation before, particularly, and if it's a big one, even maybe a little more. Give yourself a week of isolation. Is there enough food in the house to last a week? Do you have enough batteries? They now have the flashlights and the radios that you can hand wind. Very, very inexpensive. You can get through the Red Cross. You can buy it at most stores now where you can hand wind stuff. Obviously enough water, first aid kit, some of the basic stuff. Do you have someone who's a point person out of state? Because as we saw in '94, now with cell phones as prevalent as they are, you're going to want to be able to call out of state and be able to communicate to that person to connect with your loved ones here in state. If someone's down playing basketball or volleyball down in the San Fernando Valley and can't get back, chances are you're not going to be able to communicate with your child that way. Have a point person out of state and you can get information back and forth.
Now, you mentioned the internet and we're talking about radio, and what happens if we have one of several different kinds of disasters when the power goes out? Are you still able to broadcast? Or
we have backup systems for broadcasting. Look, if a real big one hits and their tower goes down, that's going to be a different story. But we have redundancy systems, as does the city, the Red Cross, the Hart School District. There are enough redundancy systems with the internet so that if a big one hits, we can get the internet up. But now, can people get internet access? that's going to be questionable. But as each month goes on, as you've said a few minutes ago, you're going to get, you're buying a Bluetooth and someone else is buying the internet service on their cell phone. Pretty soon we're going to have that.
Right.
Everybody's going to have that.
Wireless, and the batteries will last a while.
Right, I've got my BlackBerry. It's going to last a while. You want to have some backup systems so the batteries can continue, and that's how we're going to be communicating.
How prepared is the Hart District for any disaster?
Well, we've just spent the last year getting all our communication systems up, so we've either upgraded it or we have brand new systems for the new schools like West Ranch and Golden Valley and Rancho Pico. So everyone has a communication system. That means that after the drop, cover, hold in the classroom, our teachers escort the kids through an evacuation route to an evacuation area where attendance is taken. And at that point, our search and rescue team goes out and we find out what is the situation in all of our classrooms. Can we account for every teacher, every student? That report then goes from that school to Jamie Castellanos, our superintendent, and he will gather all that information from all the schools, and then we will contact Rob Gapper, our assistant superintendent, who will be down at the city, or someone at the city will get our information and then deploy, maybe we need a helicopter to do a rescue somewhere. But that's where all the information will be sent down there, and then at that point, the Sheriff's Department, the Fire Department, all of them will be deployed to different areas at that moment. But the communication system is great. We even went so far as to get Brad Marquardt from the ham radio volunteer group from the city, and we now have 23 teachers that are now trained with ham radio. They're certified, and so we have ham radios at each school to assist. We also want to make sure that we don't cloud up the waves. We want to keep them free and clear for the people that need to be on the waves. And that's an important thing that Brad really wants to get across to everyone. In a time of emergency, we need to have the air clear for important announcements. But also, the radio is real important to us because, like I said, if it happens during the daytime and moms and dads are down in the valley and they don't know what happened to their kids. Let's say it happens at 10 o'clock. Well, we will also be feeding information to our local radio station here, KHDS, and at that point, they'll be announcing that we've heard that Canyon High School is all clear sign, everything's fine there, but 2 buildings are down at Roseco, whatever. And so parents will know at that point that I need to be concerned or I don't need to be concerned.
If they're here, they can hear it on AM 1220, and if they're in Glendale or wherever, they can go
on our website. But also what we're learning, we stream during an emergency, and people are picking us up. Right now, with the fires, people are picking us up all over the world, listening to the streams because they're concerned about it and wanting to get that information. That's the beauty of the internet now.
Right.
But we're going through all the bins. It's an ongoing process continually, because there's always stuff on the shelf that expires, like the batteries. Just recently, on last Friday, 10 volunteers from Sierra Vista came in and cleaned out the 2 bins that they have there. And
when you say bins, what are we talking about?
They're disaster bins. Some are 60 feet long, like they have at the high school, and the junior highs maybe have 40 feet. They're steel bins that can't be damaged. We open them up, and it's organized in a way that the search and rescue team has all of their materials labeled in bags and ready to go with crowbars to get into a room that they can't get into, break windows, whatever they have to do. So it needs to be well organized, but the shelf life is expired on a lot of things, even Band-Aids. It's so hot in there that the paper becomes, it just crumbles, and so they're not sealed anymore. So now we have to get fresh Band-Aids. The ice packs no longer have the gel in them. It's all dissolved because it's so hot. So you hate to throw all that stuff out, but
have you had a test run yet on this system, or have you actually used it in real life yet?
We have had every year we have an earthquake drill. Every year in October. This year we're doing it in November, just so we go along with the city's drill and the Great Southern California Shakeout, where every business and all the schools are going to be participating in this event.
Well, those bins were also used during the fires last year, and the Red Cross bins were used during the fires.
Right.
So with each emergency, there is some use for them.
Right. Do you have a role in this, or are you participating somehow in this shakeout next month?
Yes, we'll be wearing two hats with the Disaster Coalition, also with the radio station. The Disaster Coalition, what I wanted to say earlier too, is made up. We're part of a 501c3 through the Senior Center, so we're under the umbrella of the Senior Center, and then we're made up of a who's who of all the key organizations in Santa Clarita: the city, the county, College of the Canyons, the Heart District. It's really an interesting mix. And yes, so we'll be playing a significant role there from the radio station standpoint as one of the first responders there from the information side, and then the Disaster Coalition in sharing what we're doing as a second responder, as we call ourselves.
If I have a kid in the Heart District, what assurance? What do you want parents to know? I mean, what assurance can I have that my kid's going to be that somehow my kid's going to be safe if we have some big disaster and I can't get to him?
If they go to our website, the Heart District website, they will see on that website under disaster preparedness just what they can expect us to do. And these are, in fact, it says these are questions that every parent should know about the Heart District and how we will respond to disasters. And there's a list of things. And one of the things is that we just talked about, if I can't get back in town, how do I find out about the schools? How will I pick up my son or daughter? Well, there's a reunion gate at every school, and they're going to have to show some identification. We're not going to give their son or daughter away to some stranger. So, we will be prepared to go into our SASE system, that's our student data file, because we'll have generators that will allow us to get into computers. So we're pretty well set up that way. We've done the drills. I've watched the drills. I've audited bins. We know what we're missing and what we need to do to fill up the bins. And that's ongoing, and we're in pretty good shape. We actually have a model bin at Valencia High School, and the night of the Disaster Preparedness Summit, that bin will be open. Les Luxmore, the assistant principal, went to great lengths to really get that thing the way it should be. He also has a 10,000-gallon water tank that stores water and is ready to go if we need to give water to, if we have 3,000 kids at Valencia High School, what are we going to do? We need water.
For those who remember '94, water was a big issue here in Santa Clarita.
And especially for the first few.
We have another way to get information out as well, and that's through a news stream that we send out. So if you go to any of the high school, any of the Heart schools, College of the Canyon websites, elementary school websites, you'll see a news stream which talks about news school stories most of the time, but when there's an emergency, we're feeding that information through the radio station. Right. And we've triggered that just in the last 3 months. We've triggered that emergency feed probably 5 or 6 times already. Everything from the sinkhole on Valencia Boulevard to the day that there was a shooting on Lyons Avenue and that was shut down and impacting 2 of the elementary schools. Anything impacting our schools gets on that feed as well.
We've got to wrap it up, but you want people to go to Valencia High School at 7 p.m. on October
28th.
28th.
Yes.
And pay attention when the disaster preparedness one hits on November 13th.
On November 13th, right.
Yes,
Bob Weber, Carl Goldman, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us. If you missed any portion of this program, you can see it again and again on SCVTV.com. Check back here, Channel 20, Sunday 8:30 a.m., Thursday 9 p.m. for another Newsmaker of the Week.